Hi everyone, it's Harry here from Year 13, and I have Kurt Debens here with me on behalf of Rising Sun Pictures, a world-renowned high-end visual effects studio headquartered in Adelaide. So welcome, Kurt. It's great to have you involved in the Year 13 Expo this year. And before we get into the detail of the exciting world of blockbuster films and visual effects, I'd like to get a little bit of a background on you and your journey thus far since maybe high school, and how you discovered visual effects, and also how you landed in your current role at Rising Sun Pictures.
Cool. Yeah. So look, in terms of my journey to visual effects, I started probably as a kid, just liking movies like most people. My mum and dad used to take me to movies all the time, so um, sort of had a passion for movies from a young age. One of my favourite movies is actually Lord of the Rings, which Rising Sun was lucky enough to work on the Return of the King. So at the time, I didn't know when I first started here, but one of my favourite movies that inspired me to get into the industry. So I had this passion from a young age, and ended up falling into or finding a course at UniSA that drove me down the path of visual effects. I originally started with animation, and slowly moved my way into effects as a specific subcategory of visual effects, or a department. And since then I've been going ahead with this.
Fantastic. And so Lord of the Rings is a blockbuster film, and that was kind of the seed that made you really interested and keen in working in visual effects. So from school, how did you find out that Uni of SA kind of offered that as a degree? And how did you find that, staying within, at home in Adelaide, how you could kind of make that work, and how could you transition from school into university and into that desired area?
Yeah. So at school, I at the time, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And obviously, like I said, my passion was movies and TV and those things of those nature. So I just started researching what kind of courses and what kind of pathways there were into the industry. At the time, TAFE being one and university being the other. So I decided that university was something that I wanted to try. My parents are pretty big on trying to get me to go to university as well. So it was a best of both worlds. And then I found the media arts degree, which at the time that was sort of the pathway into film and television. So once in the degree, you get to sort of find your way. Do you want to go, on set? Do you want to go post-production? Do you want to go pre-production? So I found my passion for post-production, which, like I said before, at the time, I really wanted to focus on animation. Like a lot of people, I love the Pixar and Sony animation films as well. But luckily, while I was at UniSA, they created a visual effects course. And at the time, it was pretty rough, but it's become an amazing pathway into the industry where you can now, obviously get a job at Rising Sun.
Great. And, since your time at Rising Sun Pictures, have there been any kind of career-defining projects you've worked on, or really, exciting, pieces of work you've been involved with?
Yeah, like from day one, I started in 2016, and my first film that I worked on was X-Men Apocalypse, which to work on an X-Men movie, it's a big blockbuster tentpole movie, was amazing. And then to follow that up, I got to work on Game of Thrones season 6. So you don't get much bigger than that. But since then, I've worked on Marvel movies, Disney movies, even the smaller, not so visual effects heavy movies like Ford versus Ferrari. Still amazing movies in their own right. So especially working at Rising Sun, you get to work on amazing movies all the time. So
fantastic. What an experience. That's really good. And some fantastic films there and TV series, especially Game of Thrones. That would have been incredible to work on that. So you've touched on your time at UniSA and the media arts degree, and how that allowed you to explore your passion for film and TV, and later on visual effects. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how your experience there, studying at SA, how that helped you, or how that prepared you to, get this role at Rising Sun Pictures, and how they prepared you for employment?
Yeah, so the one thing that really drove me to UniSA was hearing from people and talking to people at UniSA about how practical driven a lot of their courses were. So you do actually get to really learn skills that are vital in working in an industry like visual effects. So working in a team, working to a deadline, people skills, being able to talk to someone, not just necessarily working in a team, but a supervisor or a co-worker, or even someone that you're not necessarily working with, that's not in your team. So lots of those skills you do learn at uni, and you forget that you're doing an assignment, but you're doing a job, and you're working alongside other people to try and get a piece of work done, a shot or an assignment.
Great. So it sounds like there's a nice blend of soft skills, so interpersonal skills, working in a group and working with like real life scenarios as far as group assignments, but also the technical understanding of visual effects and animation and things. So this sounds like a very nice mix, and it's from personal experience, it's very important to have both those. As you can probably attest to, in the last 5 or 6 years at Rising Sun, there are times that you need to be purely on the tools and animation heavy and VX heavy. But then again, there's other times where it's more important to have the personal relationships and be able to kind of communicate, especially in the creative industries, things you're looking to accomplish or things that the client or your team are trying to achieve. So it's good to know that the university was preparing you for that type of blended skill set. My next question's around school students and the position they're in at the moment, and kind of like the way I'd like to ask this question is, if you were still at school, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? So what advice would you give to a student who is, let's say they're 15 to 17, they've got a passion for film, they love animation, they love the kind of doors, and the opportunities that could afford them. What advice would you have for those students in that position right now?
Yeah, I guess the massive advantage that students have these days is how resourceful the internet is. When I went through high school and even the start of university, a lot of what I do now, there wasn't a lot of resources online to find that out. And I talked to some of the older guys in the teams, and that back before anything was online, so they were books and talking to people. So the advantage students have right now is that if you do have a passion for something like visual effects, you can Google, how do I get into visual effects? What kind of, a tutorial for a specific, animation, effects, lighting, compositing. And there's so many resources online. So my sort of advice would be that if you do have a passion for, whether it be animation or on-set production or costume design, use the internet, to your advantage, and find the little pathways that are out there, because they're always going to be, they're not necessarily going to be perfect for your situation, but definitely use it to your advantage while you have it. But then also, do the subjects at school that lead you to, those passions as well. So if it's, if you do like maths, we use a lot of maths in our day-to-day as an effects artist. If you like physics, I use physics all the time. I didn't do physics at school, but I'm learning on the job.
Yeah.
You would be surprised at the weird subjects that do come into visual effects, but are also super important. So
interesting.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can get in the industry as well, but the best one is just finding out what you want to do whenever you can find that out, and making sure you have all the information you can possibly get on that.
Yeah, fantastic. That's brilliant advice. And it's interesting thinking about the application of those STEM subjects, be it maths, physics, science, and how that can translate into what would be considered as a creative industry, or obviously the technical side of the creative industry. And of course, the internet is one of the most invaluable tools we have at our disposal. And I think for those students that are looking into getting into visual effects or production or anything in that kind of film and TV industry, the internet is a good tool to explore the options, but also to explore how to pursue that. So if it is via university, or if it is via TAFE, or it is a private college, or if there are internships or cadetships or any sort of kind of training, like technical training courses they can do, the best way to find out about those both locally and those that are held online is through the internet.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's fantastic advice you give to school kids, looking for a career in visual effects. I was wondering, once you did, let's say you had left school and you were still at university and you were pursuing this interest of visual effects, and that was the career you wanted to pursue and go into, what type of skills? I know we've mentioned the skills of working through problem solving and like the conversations and managing challenges and deadlines and timings and the technical understanding as well. But are there any skills that students now and at high school and at university should focus on or try to explore or strengthen in preparation for a career in visual effects?
Yeah, look, in terms of the technical skills for the job, there's definitely certain software that we use day to day. So as an effects artist at Rising Sun Pictures, we use a software called Houdini.
Okay.
So Houdini is a pretty amazing piece of software that it has endless possibilities and can seem very daunting at first, but it's definitely something that at university or even high school to start looking at an early age and understanding how the software works and what you can is a pretty big advantage you can give yourself going into the industry. As well, understanding in terms of visual effects, lighting, compositing, both as an effects artist, you have to have a basic understanding of how to light a scene, how to composite a scene. Even though we don't necessarily do that as a job, you definitely need to understand these things. So there's more software that you can use then. So Nuke is a compositing software that we use, and we currently still light in Houdini as well. So this is a software that you can still use to create a final image, which is what we end up doing.
Awesome.
But again, there's many different pieces of software. I used Maya and Blender to start with, both equally amazing 3D softwares, but that give you the foundations on becoming a 3D artist. So I definitely recommend starting where you if you want to model some interesting environments or create a character, any 3D software will help you in the future, but start as soon as you can.
Fantastic. That's great advice. And it is, getting exposure to those programs, be it Houdini or the 3D modeling ones, because they are industry leading programs that people, professionals as yourself and VX artists are using in their day to day. So it's akin to having someone go into a science field using those kind of experiments or practicing these experiments before they actually start their job, because they've got first-hand experience using those tools.
Sure.
So once you finish university or once you finish your other sort of training or courses you've done, what advice do you have? And this could be interviewing advice, this could be developing a portfolio or proving that you've got your own kind of style or interest or area of focus. What advice would you have for those students looking to get their first foot in the door? Be it at a company similar to Rising Pictures or be it to another independent agency or firm.
Yeah. So this is a big question that always gets asked by students and even people in the industry, because that's the thing. It's quite hard to get your foot in the door in an industry where you might not have any knowledge of. But so the advice I always give is if you're a student, leaving, let's say a university degree at UniSA or a TAFE course, or even one of the Rising Sun pathways, the best bit of advice I can give you is take the work that you've produced at uni or whatever course it is. Even in high school, if you've been learning by yourself, take the work that you've been producing. And obviously, the way that we apply for jobs in this industry is with show reels. So generally, you'll have a show reel. My advice would be to show this show reel to as many people as possible, whether it be recruiters, friends, parents, whoever it is, and ask for advice, especially from recruiters. Ask them what you can improve on. if you're unsuccessful in an application to get a job, ask them why and ask them what you can improve on. And I think the key about all of this is if they do give you some advice on how to improve it, and they will, make sure you improve it in a timely manner and send it back to them and say to them, I've done what you asked of me, what next? Because that's the easiest way to get your foot in the door, is to show that you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to put in the effort, because they want to see someone who's going to be putting in the effort for them as an employee. So if you're willing to do it pre-employee, you'll have no trouble getting in the industry.
That's great advice, Kurt. It's really good advice. Yeah, it is showing your adaptability to change, but also that you're, and I imagine in the creative industry, having output that comes within, right? You've got these ideas and this thinking and how you want to execute on that. It can be quite hard to part with it or to change it, especially if you have someone externally saying, hi, I think this should be done a different way. That can be difficult, but it's probably having that understanding and ability to split your kind of connection to the work and go, right, although I loved it this way, I'm going to trust this kind of advice from someone that has been in the industry for X many years, and I'm going to attempt to kind of take that on and try to employ it into my work. And I think that would be.
I was just going to say that sort of that notion of it's the creative industry, and it is, every day is creative, and there's technical parts to it too. But in the end, I'm an artist who is producing work for another artist, whether it be a visual effects suit or even the client side suit, and they have a creative vision. So it's not necessarily my creative vision that always gets in the movie, but there is obviously creativity to it, but you have to learn to understand someone else's creative vision on top of your creative vision. So learning to take that feedback is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but the sooner that you can understand that all feedback is valid, and making sure that you're, like you said, flexible enough to be able to address feedback based on someone else's creative notes is super important in this industry like the visual effects industry.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Kurt. That's I think once you can solve that, or it's not an easy thing to do, to remove yourself from something you're connected to, if it's creative output or something you're really passionate about. But there's a lot of people in a lot of industries that would say the same thing, that in order for you to really excel and kind of become a part of a broader vision or a broader journey, it's really necessary to be able to compartmentalize or remove yourself from your own kind of objective when it comes to delivering something and the broader kind of deliverable, which is either your client's creative dream or the task you've been set, the brief you've been set. Yeah. Okay, and then Kurt, bit of a fun question. I think personally, I've got no idea, but let's say one of the Marvel films you worked on, like for a scene of, a 30-second action scene or a 15-second action scene, how many hours of visual effects work would go into it, both, as an individual, but across a team of people?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting question, because it does depend on the shot. So if we've some shots can go through the building in like a snap, and they do get through really quickly. But some of the more complex shots that we work on, which are usually the top, big explosions or house falling down or whatever it is, they can take hours and hours and hours, and per department we usually obviously layout, which is creating the environment in 3D, animation or modeling, which is making things move or making models move, and then onto effects and lighting and comp and all these departments. So you can see that the hours will add up. So for a really complex shot, you can be spending, we could start the show with one shot and it still be in the building and still being worked on by the end of the show. And sometimes that could be, 6 months to a year, and even longer sometimes. So depending on how early we get the show or how long we have to work on the show. But for the most part, it's still rewarding, even though you are on something for so long.
Absolutely.
to see it at the end of the day. But yeah, we've had some very, very long shots go through the building at some point. So.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And then I guess what add some resilience to those personal skills and soft skills you need to bring to this type of career, because that's a long time to commit yourself to a task. But I can imagine it'd be so rewarding once you're in a cinema and you look at that screen thinking, wow, I was an integral part of delivering, something that's been touched by or been seen by, tens of millions of people around the world. So
yeah, that's the big thing. A lot of industries have tangible rewards at the end, you might say, but where visual effects, you're in a really weird industry where it's not necessarily a tangible reward, but you do get a very visual and emotional reward at the end by sitting in the cinema and watching your shots play by, whether they're 10 seconds or 40 seconds.
Yeah, and knowing what was required to deliver it, and also knowing that without that, the scene wouldn't exist. And if the scene didn't exist, then technically the film wouldn't exist. And so yeah, you guys do play a huge role, and I imagine you guys are very well regarded in the industry as highly specialized a skill set.
Yeah.
So Kurt, I think unfortunately that's all we have time for today, but it was mind blowing to talk to you about all things via visual effects. Thanks again, obviously, for offering your story and how you've made your way into the industry and your work that you've done to date with Rising Sun Pictures. It was really generous of you to offer your time. And again, thank you to Rising Sun Pictures for providing this opportunity. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me.